Jones said he would periodically take her out of the closet and assault her.
No.
The kidnapper would instruct her on what to say, Jones went on to explain.
I'm here. It's just...
Investigators had come across these very same words in the handwritten torture scenarios they'd found in DeBartolaben's lockers.
I was,
He posed her for the camera and photographed her. He made her repeat a script for his tape recorder. After he was finished, she said, he would lock her in the closet for an hour or so, then drag her out and do it again. Early in the morning on June 4th, after over 28 hours, Jones' ordeal came to an end. Her kidnapper drove her back to Maryland and set her free. He warned her if she went to the police, he'd make sure everyone saw the pictures he had taken. She went to the nearest house and asked to use the telephone.
And he asked me for my ID.
Jones called her mother, and then the police.
And,
Amy Jones identified herself in the photos found in the storage locker.
what happened?
She also identified the bedroom where it had taken place.
I called most of the time.
Jones said she'd been living in terror that he would return.
I really appreciate your time.
Prior to his arrest, she worried every day almost that she was going to bump into him, roaming free on the streets. She worried that he would do to others what he had done to her.
Look, I know this is...
The FBI knew they had to do everything they could to ensure that DeBartoleben stayed in jail.
And, you know, we looked at each other and said, okay, we think we have the man. There was a sense of relief that this fellow was now off the street.
The Secret Service and the FBI finally identified one of the women from the hundreds of photos found in DeBartoleben's locker. FBI agent Roy Hazelwood knew that their investigation was only beginning.
James Mitchell DeBartoleben didn't commit a crime and stop committing and then start committing and then stop committing. That just doesn't happen. He committed a crime, and then in between other crimes, he would have been planning, thinking, collecting, gathering intelligence on, or preparing for the next crime. They're never dormant.
Her ordeal was so terrifying, agents wondered how many women like Amy Jones were still out there. The Secret Service had linked James Mitchell DeBartoleben to an abduction and rape near Washington, D.C. The strongest evidence they had were photographs and tape recordings he had made during the sexual assault. It is not unusual for criminals to record their crimes, according to FBI Special Agent Roy Hazelwood.
Number one, it serves as a trophy. A trophy meaning victory, conquest. Number two, it serves as validation of an accomplishment. I did it. I really did it. Here it is. And number three, it allows them to critique their behavior during that crime and the behavior of their victims so as to make corrections to anything they want to act out in the future that's similar.
Investigators now had proof DeBartoleben's crimes went beyond counterfeiting. Of the two victims they found, only one could visually identify her attacker. They needed more evidence to make a conviction. Then Secret Service agents learned of a rape abduction case in New Jersey. On the evening of November 12th, Karen Alario was alone at the store where she worked. A man entered and asked her if the manager was in.
Oh, no, he's not.
Alario said no, but offered to write down the manager's number.
This is a robbery.
When she turned around, she was looking down both barrels of a sawed-off shotgun.
Get away from it. Just get over here. Turn around. Stay right there. I want to hear it. Move.
He emptied the cash register but wanted more. He wanted her to come with him. He told Alario he didn't want to hurt her, but if she tried to do something stupid, he would shoot her.
Move.
Ordering his victim to avert her eyes, he forced her into his car. He drove for about 15 minutes. Detective Donald Kramer investigated the case.
She has no idea what directions they went in, but it was a relatively short drive. She couldn't see anything. Her eyes were taped. She was under a blanket.
Okay.
Alario told Kramer her kidnapper led her into a house. Once inside, he cut off her blouse and tied her up. As he molested her, he took photographs. As he had with Amy Jones, the next morning he let her go. He offered her some money for a phone call and then left her on a rural road. She flagged a passing motorist and contacted the police. Detective Kramer asked the Secret Service for some photos of DeBartoleben and the tapes they had confiscated. Kramer took the photos to Karen Alario. She picked DeBartoleben out of a photo lineup. 3 years after her abduction, she was still terrified.
We found a tape. We wanted to see if you could...
Alario listened as Detective Kramer played a tape on which DeBartoleben laid out his goals.
Secret hidden compartment for stash area, as well as a secret...
Alario said it sounded like him, but she wasn't sure.
I explained to her that I had another tape that was very graphic in nature, and I told her it might be very upsetting.
Kramer played one of the torture tapes.
That's a little better tape.
As Alario listened, she no longer had any doubt.
When she heard the tape, she started to shake a little. She looked at me, she said, "That's him." I asked her if she was sure. She said yes. She was getting very nervous-like, and tears come into her eye and start rolling down her cheek. She said, "That's the guy. That's him."
Although the woman on the tape was not Karen Alario, the victim was forced to repeat similar dialogue. In an effort to prove it was DeBartoleben's voice on the tapes, investigators made a recording of him reading a transcript. They consulted a voice print specialist who confirmed that the voice on the tapes was in fact DeBartoleben's. The Secret Service had now located 3 women whom DeBartoleben had forced into acts of sexual degradation. If the photographs he had kept were any indication, there may be hundreds. For the next year and a half, the calls poured in. The Secret Service began to investigate whether DeBartoleben might be connected to hundreds of violent crimes. Each call was checked against the database to determine whether DeBartoleben may have been involved. To further build their case, the agents sought to prove without a doubt DeBartoleben was the man in the photographs with his victims. In all of the torture photos, DeBartoleben's face could not be seen. The Secret Service asked for assistance from the Special Photographic Unit of the FBI. They contacted Supervisory Special Agent Peter Smerek an expert in portrait parley, a technique informally known as freckle analysis.
And the beautiful thing about freckles and moles is that not one of us can control where a freckle or a mole is going to appear on our body or how many of them are going to appear.
De Barteleben's arms were visible in some of the photos, but his face was not. Smerik had used freckle analysis in hundreds of cases. As a method for identification, he felt it was as reliable as fingerprints. Agents asked Smerik if he could make a positive identification using only the parts of de Barteleben's body that were in the photographs.
Unwittingly, in this case, what Mr. de Barteleben did was actually take his own crime scene photographs.
Agents got a court order for de Barteleben to submit to a series of photographs in an office at the jail where he was being held. Agents duplicated the angles and poses in the rape pictures.
So Mr. de Barteleben's body itself became a positive identification for me.
Smerik was able to identify the distinct freckle patterns on de Barteleben's arms, proving without a doubt he was the man in the photos.
Even though his face was not identifiable in the photographs, based upon the freckle patterns on his arm, his hand, his chest, and his biceps, I can say that yes, the man in bed with the victim is in fact James Mitchell de Barteleben.
Prosecutors were now convinced they had a case, but they needed to act quickly. Because de Barteleben had been committing crimes for so long, the statute of limitations on some of the assaults was about to expire. And if that happened, all their evidence would be worthless.
This way, walk. I remember doing
Investigators now had evidence. James Mitchell de Barteleben was guilty of more than just counterfeiting. They linked him to the rape abduction of 3 women. He was suspected in hundreds of other cases. Now they had to present their case in court. The kidnapping trial of Amy Jones against James Mitchell de Barteleben began on April 29, 1985. The government decided to call the victim as their first witness. To help Amy Jones cope with her painful memories, the court brought in a victims relief specialist.
Miss Jones, would you please look at these photos and tell me if you can identify the woman?
Jones identified herself as the woman in some of de Barteleben's photos.
It's me. Thank you.
De Barteleben had fired his court-appointed attorney and was acting as his own lawyer. In court, when he cross-examined witnesses, he occasionally referred to the attacker as if it was someone other than himself. The witnesses turned the tables on de Barteleben, according to Secret Service agent Stevens.
So, what's important for the victim to do is to say, no, I'm not talking about this person, I'm talking about you, sir. You're the one that did this. You're the one that picked me up. You're the one that impersonated a police officer and pulled me over. You, and you. Of course, he kept objecting to that type of thing, but it made an impression on the jury.
The jury deliberated for 2 hours and returned a verdict of guilty. De Barteleben was sentenced to 180 years in prison. For the assault on Laurie Cobert, he received 2 life sentences, and for the kidnapping of Karen Alario, he received 60 years. For his counterfeiting crimes, he was sentenced to 135 years.
I received notes after trials where he was convicted from some of the female victims who described what it meant to them to, after years of being, in some cases, afraid to leave their house or never letting their children out of their eyesight even for a second, could suddenly transform